Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, Instagram. So Facebook went and switched the browser requirements again. So I'm a little late because I had to change my Facebook setup. So sorry to be a few minutes late. They keep doing that to me. It's like I get all set up to go live and then they're like, oh, this browser, you can't use this browser anymore. So now you got to switch to something else. So it's a Monday. Instagram, good to see you. Good morning. Facebook, good morning. So I'm using different cameras. It's a little bit different over here on Facebook today. I know I'm a little bit bigger. Hello. But I'm going to be talking about heartburn and Gerd today. And the naturopathic perspective on that is quite different than the conventional perspective in general, I think. And so maybe there'll be some interesting tidbits for you, because I know that many of you, pretty much 20 to 30% of the American population has trouble with Gerd, which is reflux disease. So it's a good topic. I hope you guys had a good weekend. Did everyone have a good Mother's Day? My kids made me these cute little cards, which was great. And then they ran into the kitchen and made themselves pancakes while I sat outside with my coffee. So that was pretty funny. I think they offered me a pancake like after the fact, as after they loaded up their plates, they were like, oh, hey mom, would you like a pancake? Silly kids. So did you guys all have a good Mother's Day? Good weekends? Here in Arizona, we're opening up a little bit more today. I know some of the restaurants are starting to open a little bit more, not extensively, but some outdoor seating far apart and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how this whole thing goes this week. So for those of you just joining or that don't know me, I am Dr. Tricia Pingel, and this is your morning checkup, and it is Monday, the 11th of May. Crazy, it's already May. So we're going to talk a little bit about heartburn or Gerd, which is a mouthful or an easy way to say gastroesophageal reflux disease, which essentially means that you have chronic stomach acid regurgitating into the esophagus. That's what that means. The fancy way of saying that. So for today, we're going to call it Gerd or heartburn. Now, it's really chronic heartburn that we're speaking about, although there's reasons you could have acute or quick heartburn as well. So we're going to talk about that. So let's talk about what it is, and then we'll talk a little bit about why we need stomach acid and why stomach acid is so important, okay? And then we're going to talk about the side effects, not only of low stomach acid, but also of the primary medication used for these conditions, PPIs, or proton pump inhibitors. Those are your Prevacid. Prevacid. Chronic use of those has a ton of side effects. So we're going to talk about that as well and how that can cause further detriment to your health. I also would not have a normal live if I didn't talk about stress and how stress lowers stomach acid and how stress causes heartburn. So we're going to talk about that as well. And then we'll talk about some natural things that you can do, some herbs, some therapies, and things to discuss with your doctor. So I see that most of us have joined on both ends now. I'm getting a how are you? I'm doing well. Thank you. It's Monday. So I was able to rest a little bit over the weekend, which I definitely needed. So it's good. I hope all of you had a nice restful weekend and are back to, go after it hardcore today. The little change in browser and camera on Facebook threw me off a little bit this morning, but hey, it's new. Here we go. So anyway, I'm Dr. Tricia Pingel. This is your morning checkup. And Gerd, gastroesophageal reflux disease. In other words, chronic heartburn. It is estimated, and this is probably an underestimation, to affect 60 million Americans. Now, why is that number so amazing? Because every day right now we're looking at how many cases of a virus do we have? How many cases do we have? We hit the million and everyone went, oh my goodness, which is awful, okay? It's horrible. It's tough, right? But I also want to keep in perspective that 60 million people use medications and are being actively treated for reflux in the United States. And from that, we have a lot of other diseases that develop from that. That is a large percentage of our population, somewhere between 20 to 30% of Americans, okay, which is huge. Okay, so this is a big deal. This is an epidemic in itself. It's one we don't hear about. You know, you can walk to the pharmacy and you can buy that little purple Nexium or whatever, the purple one, little antacid over the counter without even a doctor's prescription, okay? But have you read about it? Have you read the side effects? Do you know what it means to suppress acid? Do you know what stomach acid does for you? These are the things we're going to talk about today, because there is always a time and a place to use certain medications and therapies, okay? There are, okay? But you should always know at what cost, how long to use them, what are the side effects of these situations. That's what I want to talk about today, okay? Take it down a notch? Okay, well, I don't know if other people would like me to calm down and not be so passionate, speak it up, and I'll happily calm down. Someone's saying I'm too hyper, but they might not be regulars. So anyway, GERD occurs when acid is chronically being regurgitated into the esophagus. So remember, we've talked about this a little bit before, that our digestive system is made of mucosal tissue. Now, what does that mean? If you look inside your lip here and you see this pink tissue inside your mouth, that's what runs all the way through our digestive tract, okay? And if you could imagine acid hitting that without protection, it causes a lot of inflammation and redness and could cause ulcers, those types of things, okay? So our stomach is prepared to handle that. Our stomach is prepared to handle a pH around 2, where the rest of our mucosal surfaces are not, okay? So when acid hits the mucosal surfaces that are not protected, we get burning, or we get damage, or we get inflammation, and that is the source of reflux. That is why we feel heartburn. That is why we feel symptoms in that tissue. Now remember that our digestive system is connected from top to bottom. So if you're having impact somewhere along it, you're going to have impact in other areas as well, right? Think about, well, we'll come back to that in just a second, because I want to make sure you understand the physiology. So when you eat a meal, you are supposed to start breaking it down with stomach acid. Stomach acid kicks off the digestive process, okay? So it lands in the stomach, acid is released. That acid then triggers the release of other enzymes from the gallbladder, from the pancreas, that help break down proteins, fats, carbohydrates, and stomach acid particularly starts to break down proteins, okay? So these are all starting to break down in a cascade-like appearance. If you don't have the proper amount of acid there, and we're just going to talk about normal functioning for a second, you're not going to be able to have proper digestion, okay? Now, many of you, if I asked you what causes reflux or heartburn, you would all say excessive acid, right? Not always. In fact, I find the majority of the time the person actually has too little acid. So what do I mean? How could that be, right? How could it burn the esophagus if we don't have enough? Well, I just told you that when food lands in the stomach, it starts to release acid, which releases enzymes. So if you don't have that, let's say that you're low in stomach acid for causes that we'll come back to, I won't leave you hanging, the food will sit in your stomach. It won't move through. Okay? And there's this little trap door on top of our stomach that opens and closes for food to go in and out. Okay? So let's say that your stomach fills with food, right? And then this little trap door just kind of leaks open. And the small amount of acid, it only takes a drop, folks, leaks up into the esophagus. And that causes a very mild reaction. It could be anything initially from simply feeling full and bloated, indigestion. Sometimes we get a little bit of a cough if it's happening all the time. There's dry cough that doesn't go away. Sometimes you get a little bit of pain, above the belly button. Sometimes you get some heartburn, or you don't notice it till you lay down. But what you do notice is that the food is not moving through your stomach very quickly. So a half an hour later, say you're bloated or your stomach feels very full, that's usually a sign that there's lower stomach acid. So the problem with taking an acid blocker, just looking at the symptom of heartburn, is you could potentially block the acid further, okay? And that causes more problems. Now, there are situations where somebody does have more stomach acid than they should. And there's also physical conditions that can cause that. Like if you have a hiatal hernia, which basically means that your stomach has a piece kind of sticking out that's pushing up against the stomach, that's pushing open that trap door, you could have acid come up into the esophagus. Now, typically you would have more symptom with that because the acid would be of normal levels, okay? So imagine how much acid would you need to just burn this tissue? I mean, just a drop, right? So if you have low stomach acid and you just get a couple little drops in there every day after you eat, it's chronically going to cause a problem over time. Make sense? So a lot of the cases that I see of GERD or reflux are from small amounts of acid over time moving into the esophagus, and that causes more digestive issues. Now, the problem with that is then you have poor nutrient absorption, you have poor food absorption, right? And that causes more problems. So I want to talk about that situation. And also the overuse of the PPIs, because in that situation, you don't want to block the acid. In that situation, you actually want to add acid, right? So you have to get to the bottom to why the acid is happening, okay? Why are we having the acid reflux? It's real easy to block a symptom and say I'm uncomfortable and take a PPI. And, you know, if you're doing that occasionally, probably not that big of a deal. But if you're doing that chronically every single day, there is going to be an impact on your health in other ways. And that's what I want to talk about. I want to educate you on that, okay? Okay, so as for some of you that just joined, I just want to remind you, over 60 million people in the US have heartburn, chronic heartburn, and use medications such as PPIs. 60 million. 30%, 20 to 30% of you. Crazy. Okay, so where do I want to go in my notes next, kids? All right. So we're going to talk about low stomach acid and what would cause low stomach acid and why low stomach acid is a problem. So first of all, if you're using an acid blocker every single day, you now have low stomach acid just from the medication alone. So you will qualify as to some of these symptoms, okay? Now, let's say you're not using acid blocking medication. There are symptoms that can happen from low stomach acid, so this would be something to pay attention to. One, you may get mild heartburn or bloating, trouble digesting your food, feeling really full after meals. You know, a half an hour later, you're like, wow, I'm still full. Other conditions that may cause low stomach acid, many autoimmune conditions, lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, vitiligo, multiple sclerosis, GI autoimmunity, celiac disease, ulcerative colitis, gastric cancer. If you eat a lot of irritating foods to the stomach, sometimes that can cause problems as well. I typically see people with low stomach acid have a lot of skin issues, in particularly psoriasis, hives, acne, rosacea, and eczema. I also see a lot of cases of osteoporosis and osteopenia associated with the use of PPIs, but also with low stomach acid, hair loss, food allergies, asthma. All of these are all tied in. I have someone saying sort of getting heartburn with chocolate milk. Yeah, hang on. First of all, the dairy I find causes a lot of heartburn, and the chocolate can as well, but it goes beyond that, okay? It's more than just what you eat. It's what the body does with it, okay? On that point, like you could take two people, right? If I take my husband, I take myself, and I eat a chili and I do fine, and he eats a chili and he gets heartburn. Is it the chili that causes the heartburn, or is it the person? Right? If 5 people eat a chili and only one has a reaction, it's not the chili. It's the way the chili is being absorbed in the body. It's the person's body that's causing that reaction to the chili, right? So you have to look at why. Why is that person having a reaction to a chili? Does that make sense? So that's where you always have to look for when it comes to GERD and reflux. So I spend a lot of my clinical time on dealing with low stomach acid and GERD related to low stomach acid. Okay, so I want to talk about, let's see, I'm going to go to this link for you because I want to talk about PPIs a little bit and the dangers of them and why we care. Okay, so if you're blocking stomach acid and it is meant to break down food and absorb nutrients, you will have a resultant mineral deficiency and vitamin deficiency. Now, if any of you have opened up that packet of the proton pump inhibitor that you're taking once or twice a day and read it, you will see the common side effects that have been found. Some of them have been pointed out in the paperwork now, some you have to do a little bit further research on. First of all, PPI use or constant blocking of acid has been associated with more development of community-acquired pneumonia. Okay? Yeah. Why? Because stomach acid is there to protect us against many organisms. Okay, so it's this low pH. If you're blocking the acid, the pH of your stomach goes up. When the pH of your stomach goes up, it allows bacteria to grow. Okay? If it grows, also keep in mind, if you're blocking the acid and you're not breaking food down, you're also slowing your metabolism. You're slowing your absorption of food. Okay, so the bacteria that land from the food or that have been ingested or, shared, community-acquired pneumonia is commonly shared amongst nursing homes, assisted livings, dorms, things like that. If you've consumed some sort of bacteria and your digestion is slowed due to lack of acid and the pH is high, you are more likely to spread infection. Hydrochloric acid in our stomach is there as part of our immune defense. And it is one that gets diminished when either you have low stomach acid in general or when you're blocking it with a PPI. Okay? So, in particularly, Helicobacter pylori is a big one, is a one that causes a lot of ulcers and problems. C. difficile, Clostridium difficile, is a bacteria that is so hard to treat. And it is miserable. If any of you had it, you know what I'm talking about. I'll spare the details. But horrible one, but also highly linked to pneumonia, particularly in the elderly, the immunocompromised, smokers, those with COPD, asthma, okay? It is part of our immune defense mechanism, our acid. So it is not a bad thing to have stomach acid. We don't want to constantly block it. I've talked before about if you could imagine a freeway and, the cars are going on the freeway and then all of a sudden there's just a blockade. And you can't go to where you want to go. No matter what detour you take, you can't get to your destination. That causes a problem, right? So if your stomach's like, oh my gosh, I need to produce acid, I need to produce it, I need to break my food down, and it can't, what is it supposed to do? So it either will cause side effects or you'll have the side effects of having to go a different route. Maybe your drive is 8 hours longer, right, for a 20-minute drive, if that makes sense, kind of just to put it in some sort of perspective. Fractures, osteopenia, osteoporosis. Many of you have probably seen many of the ads on TV about how PPIs can cause osteoporosis. I see a bunch of questions coming through, guys. I'll go back at the end and answer them, I promise, okay? Wake up, Dr. Pingel. Although apparently I'm too hyper today. Gotta get used to me. I'm always hyper. That's just me. If I'm not, worry. Osteopenia. So there have been numerous studies that are suggesting, now they haven't all been significantly, or have not all been 100% significant, but significant enough to put warnings about it, okay? From epidemiological studies, they have found an increased risk in hip, spine, and wrist fractures in patients on long-term acid-blocking medication, okay? The reason being is with the acid suppression, there is reduced absorption of calcium in the diet. And in fact, it's estimated 41% reduction in calcium absorption in the diet, okay, after 14 days of using a standard over-the-counter PPI. Now, many of you go, oh, well, I'll just, take a calcium supplement with it. Now, think about that. How are you going to break it down? You can't, because you're blocking the acid. So you can take all the calcium you want. Not going to get the efficacy you want, okay? You're stopping digestion. You put a roadblock. The calcium's not going anywhere. It's taking the wrong route. It doesn't know where to go. It just gets deposited in random places. It can't get absorbed into the bone the way it should be. On top of that, if you watched my live on magnesium last week, you learned that calcium, magnesium, and potassium and sodium, they all play a very intricate role with each other. So the other thing that's been shown from long-term PPI therapy is low levels of magnesium. Okay, and low levels of magnesium have tons of symptoms, as we talked about. If you missed that, was it Tuesday last week? It's on my Facebook page, it's on my Instagram, IGTV, so check it out. But if you have low magnesium, you have more muscle spasms, more problems in the heart with muscle contraction, more problems in the gut with muscle contraction. Remember that your small intestine is a muscle, okay? And it has to move things through out of the body, right? So they found, and then obviously if your magnesium gets too low, it could actually be detrimental to your health completely with tetany, cramps, convulsions, arrhythmias, and severe low blood pressure. Okay, so there was some sort of stat here. Let's see. PPI users appear to have a 40% higher risk of low magnesium levels than people who don't take PPIs. Okay? Upon discontinuation of the PPI, the magnesium would come back up to normal levels within 1 to 2 weeks. Okay? But then, when you put the PPI back in, the magnesium levels would drop. Pretty crazy, right? Oh, good. Someone likes the hyper. Yay. Me too. So, so be careful. Obviously, if you're taking a diuretic for heart disease, that also is going to lower magnesium levels. So if you're doing that in conjunction with a PPI, which is very common because many people are on PPI therapy due to obesity, cardiovascular disease, and other issues, you're going to have some problems here nutritionally. Okay. Vitamin B12. Now, I haven't done my live yet on vitamin Bs. I do have it on the list. It's so fascinating how many things vitamin Bs are involved in, vitamin B12 in particular. But vitamin B12 also has a huge role in mental health, like in dementia, nerves, nerve health, energy. And here's the thing, B12 will be malabsorbed in the absence of acid because bacteria will eat it. So we have to kill that bacteria so that the B12 can make it into the small intestine so that we as humans can convert it into an active form and get utilization of it. If it's left in the stomach in high pH with all those bacteria, they will eat it. So they will eat your vitamin B12 and you don't stand a chance after that to absorb it. So even if you're putting it in and you're supplementing it, they're going to eat it. So that is why you also see a ton of bacterial overgrowths in the small intestine as well. You see a lot of flora changes when there's no acid in the stomach, okay? This is huge. I did another live on that. Check it out, okay? All right. We talked about dementia. There are many other conditions that can happen when you're taking a PPI as far as like inducing autoimmune conditions and like such as lupus. And then when you remove the PPI, the lupus goes away. And then when you put it back in, it comes back. So there's a lot of interactions. I'm not trying to scare you folks because there's times that you have to use something like this. Let's say you have an ulcer and you take a PPI for 2 weeks so that you can heal it up. Okay, let's say you're pregnant and you're in the end of your third trimester and the baby's pushing up on your stomach. It hurts, okay? I've been there. So you may take some sort of acid blocking medication. However, there's also other remedies which we're going to talk about, but you have to read the pamphlet, okay? So all of these studies, majority of them all say this happens with long-term use. Now I pose the question, what is long-term use? Is that 2 weeks? Is that 6 months? Is that a year? Is that 5 years? Considering the average person stays on a PPI for chronic heartburn for more than 5 years, we should probably know when the risk becomes a problem. Almost all the studies say 1 year. So if you've been on a PPI for more than 1 year, you really need to worry about your digestion. So I encourage you to go back and look at what could be causing it. So let's talk a little bit about what causes GERD. And it would not be Dr. Pingel if I didn't talk about stress, right? How does stress impact your digestion? If you're in the woods and you're running from a bear, you are not digesting your food. That happens when you're at rest, which is why it is called rest and digest, right? So if you're not resting and digesting, you are not producing the right amount of acid and enzymes to break down your food. So chronic stress will slow your digestion. You slow your digestion, you lower your enzymes and your acid, your nutrient absorption. That causes more stress on the body, right? If you don't have enough B12, you can't break down carbohydrates for energy. You can't break down fats for energy. If you don't have enough magnesium, your muscles can't work appropriately. If you don't have enough calcium, calcium works in muscle contraction as well. So if you're nutrient deficient, it's going to cause more symptoms more disease and therefore more stress. Then it doesn't even really matter if the external stress is there. You could be as calm as a cucumber, but if you have internal stress, it's going to continue this cycle with less digestion. It's always important, particularly when you're under stress, to support the natural function of the body. Okay, so support the digestion, support it with proper acid, proper digestive enzymes, proper nutrition, and allow the body to relax so that it can do what it needs to do. If you're not relaxing, you're also not clearing your liver, right? That makes you toxic. You have more symptoms, right? That's stressful again, right? So we get in this hamster wheel. Stress is the ultimate hamster wheel. And what causes stress on the body really doesn't care. It doesn't have to be the death of a loved one to feel stress. It could be diabetes. It could be low stomach acid, low B12, it can't do what it wants to do, and that's stressful, okay? Like if you go to work and none of your workers show up, that's stressful. How are you supposed to turn out your product? Our body is one big working machine, okay? And it needs to rest in order to heal. And that's very, very, very important, particularly when it comes to digestion and stomach acid, okay? So I want to give you some of the symptoms that you may have in general with GERD, but also with low stomach acid. Obviously, we've talked about the reduced nutrient levels. So let's say your doctor runs a B12 test and you're on the low end. That could be a reason why. Poor protein digestion, lots of bacterial overgrowth in the intestines. Small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, otherwise known as SIBO. Very common in low acid situations, whether you're taking an acid blocker or whether you just have low acid, for the same reason we just talked about. Can't kill off those bad bacteria. Water today, not only coffee, to calm down. Constipation, think about the impact of constipation on your digestion. If you have a long tube and nothing's clearing out of the bottom, what's going to happen at the top, right? It's going to back up. And when it backs up, remember that analogy of the stomach with the little door on the top? If the stomach is backed up, the little door is going to open, more acid is going to come up. Right? It's very important that you are eliminating. You're putting food in, it's being broken down, it's being absorbed, and it's being eliminated. Anyone who has had a baby before knows that if they are not eating and eliminating, you take them to the doctor, right? Yet as adults, when we're not eating, absorbing, and eliminating, we wait like weeks on end before we see a doctor, right? We're like, we're constipated, no big deal, right? But it is. Okay, it does back everything up, and guess what? That causes more stress. It also causes more inflammation in the lower part of the digestion, and as I told you about earlier, we're all connected. It's this tissue all the way through. So if you're inflamed on the bottom, you're going to eventually be inflamed on the top. If you're inflamed on the top, it's eventually going to inflame on the bottom. That's just the way it goes, okay? You can't stop that. We're connected. We're not... our esophagus is not disconnected from our rectum. I mean, they're all the same tube, okay? So you have to think about them as the same tube and treat it as a whole, okay? I see people waving, hello. All right, nausea, upset stomach, tons of gas, burping, bloating after eating, okay? And then you could even go farther to say someone says I'm cutting out on Facebook. Yeah, man, I'm sorry. I'll repost it, okay? We've had all sorts of issues with Facebook Lives lately. But I am recording it on Instagram, okay? So worst case. And also someone's asking about IBS, exactly. So anytime you have a problem at the end, you're gonna have a problem at the top ultimately. The other thing that can happen is you can just have diarrhea when you take acid blockers just because the body's like, get it out, right? Other things you may look at, dilated capillaries on the nose, weak fingernails, undigested food in your stool, things like that are going to the next level of malabsorption, okay? So keep a look at those. So we're gonna talk about what you can do because that's why you're all here, right? So number one, always consider why. Why do I have heartburn? Do I have a physical problem that is pushing the stomach up, right? Third trimester pregnancy, hiatal hernia, some sort of tumor that's secreting acid, okay? Obviously, you want to rule that out. If it's not that, you want to assess, could it be low stomach acid causing malabsorption and slow digestion? Am I under a lot of stress, right? Do I have the other symptoms of low acid secretion? And I do have an article drpingel.com, and I'll post it in the comments, okay? Take a look at those symptoms. This goes so much further than the digestion, guys. If you've listened to some of my lives about the connection between the gut and the brain, this could go into depression, anxiety, OCD, hyperactivity, attention, disorders. The brain and the gut work together. They communicate, and the flora of the gut play a massive role in that, okay? So if the flora in the gut are off, the neurotransmitters in the gut are off. And here's another kicker. If you take anti-anxiety medication, antidepressive medication, those have an impact on stomach acid as well. So whenever you're slowing the digestion, it causes an exasperation of other symptoms. If I couldn't get to where I wanted to go on the freeway because of a big blockade, I would get pretty anxious and annoyed about it as well, right? So the body's like, what is going on? I'm just trying to absorb B12 and magnesium and selenium and iron. I don't understand, right? Iron. I should mention, those of you with chronic iron deficiency anemia, iron requires stomach acid and vitamin C. So if any of you saw the live on vitamin C, you'll see the importance of that. Stomach acid is critical. So you can take all the iron you want. If you're not breaking it down, what's the point? Could probably cause more harm than good in that case. Okay? So many of you probably have heard from your primary care, elevate the bed at night and avoid certain foods and take your medication, right? That's pretty much what we get. Sometimes they recommend sleep studies and things like that. So elevating the bed, let's just think about that from a functional perspective. Of course that would work because you're sleeping like this, okay? Now, I personally don't like to sleep like that. I don't sleep very well like that, but if your head is up here and your feet are down here, naturally it would drive things with gravity downwards, right? So we could just accept that and say, okay, we'll raise our bed, or we could say, wait a minute, why are things not moving down like they're supposed to? Why do I have to use gravity? Everyone else can do it without that. Everyone else can sleep flat, and they digest their food. Why don't I? Right? Doesn't make any sense. We'll help with the symptom, and it's great for temporary relief of the symptom, but it doesn't solve the problem. The problem is you're not moving food through your digestive tract. So you need to lay like this so that you don't have more of a backup, right? So think about the functionality of that for a moment. It's not intuitive, right? I mean, obviously there's a problem. It is intuitive, I should say. It's a problem. It's a problem with food moving out of the body, okay? But that's why it works, because it brings gravity in. Number two, you have a bunch of foods. They say, well, avoid acidic foods, okay? And those would be, a lot of nightshades are acidic. So you could think of like tomatoes and eggplant and peppers, chilies, garlic, onion. A lot of times they'll tell you to avoid soda, which you should anyway, because what are you getting out of a soda? Nothing except sugar and chemicals, but that's another day. Fried foods, spicy foods, coffee, chocolate, alcohol, right? Okay, a lot of these you should avoid for your health anyway. Not the coffee for me, but I don't have reflux. I still get my coffee. Sugar, as someone just said, exactly, right? But to go back to my point before, how come I can eat a chili and my husband can't, right? It's not necessarily the food, it's the environment at which the food is being introduced to. Now, people have allergies, okay? If you have allergies to a food, you should not eat it, okay? There are things that you can do, cleaning up the diet, lowering inflammation, which lower the severity of the allergies, which we talked about before. But the bottom line is, it's not the food causing your heartburn, okay? It's a problem in the digestion causing your heartburn, right? The food just happens to aggravate it, right? So think about that. Now you can eliminate those foods in the meantime just to help out while you're working towards the source, right? If you need to use an acid blocker temporarily because you're miserable, you do, but you always need to be looking at the source. How can I fix it, okay? Exercise, huge, right? If we want to move things through, if you're someone that has slow digestion, if you're constipated or you feel like food doesn't move through the stomach, you need to get moving. Now, just so you know, definition of constipation is absolutely ridiculous in my opinion in adults, and I should do a live on this. They say if you go 3 days without a bowel movement, that's normal. Now, take a child. a toddler, an infant, and say the same thing? No way. Kid goes 3 days without a bowel movement, and I'm sorry, they're in the doctor. Someone says I need to write a book. Hey, I have. It's called Total Health Turnaround. It's available on Amazon, and you can check out the link at drpingel.com. And it's all about how stress impacts each area of the body and how to reverse that. So there you go. And there's another book hopefully in the future as well. But think about that with an infant. If you have a child and they don't have a bowel movement in 3 days, you freak out, right? I'm a mom, I know, right? But if an adult doesn't have a bowel movement in 3 days, that's considered normal? We eat way more than an infant. Why aren't we going to the bathroom, right? So constipation's a big one. You need to get more exercise, need to get things moving. If you're slow in that arena, something is not right with the digestion. And if you don't have heartburn now, you will eventually, because it'll back up. It's gonna happen, okay? So one of my favorite remedies, natural remedies for this, and let me just preface this by saying all of these I'm giving to you for your education. Speak to your doctor before you change anything up, okay? Because as I've talked about, there's a lot of interactions, and a PPI, if you stop it, if you've been on it for a while and you stop it without weaning it off, you will have a resurgence of acid. The body will be like, yes, more acid, I can take the freeway, and it'll start just driving, and it causes a lot more problems, okay? Digestive enzymes are one of my favorite ways to help with this, especially if this is due to stress or downregulation of digestion. So we talked about how acid kicks off this cascade of digestive enzymes as you move forward. You can actually take digestive enzymes. So you've heard of some of these. You've heard of lactase, right? Sucrase. People take Lactaid when they drink milk, which baffles me because it means that the body doesn't want it. If you can't metabolize it, it means the body doesn't want it, or there's a problem with the digestion, right? But yet we just supplement with a lactase and keep drinking milk. I don't get it. But anyway, this is things like protease, which break down proteins for nutrition. Okay, there's things like lipase, which break down fats to release energy, right? These are things that break down what we eat into nutrients. Why do we need nutrients? So we can function. If you don't have any fuel, you're not functioning. If there's no fuel in the car, you're not driving anywhere, right? Why do we eat? No, we don't eat to be happy and feel comfort. We eat so that we can get nutrition, so that we can drive our car. It's our fuel, and that's what it is, okay? So if you're not breaking that down and utilizing it, your car is gonna quit on you, okay? So enzymes help do that. They're released from the gallbladder, they're released from the pancreas. The stomach is kind of a kickoff to all of that. So using digestive enzymes can really help in breaking that food down. So if you're one of those people that you eat a meal and a half an hour later, you're like, oh, I'm still full, and your stomach is bloated and it feels full, you probably could use some enzymes. Now, speaking to the people who are not on an acid blocker, okay? You can also use things like apple cider vinegar to stimulate stomach acid or a more acidic environment. I have a great live on that. Got a lot of response on that one. Thank you guys. And I have an article on apple cider vinegar as well. Apple cider vinegar, in my opinion, is a cure-all for pretty much everything. But and that's in a natural perspective, okay? It's not gonna cure a disease, but it's an amazing thing to incorporate into your life, okay? And one of the ways that it does that is by changing the acidic in the stomach, keeping the stomach more acidic, killing off bacteria, that type of thing. It also helps kick down the breakdown of proteins. Now, you can also get enzymes that have hydrochloric acid in them, okay? Now, if you're taking an acid blocker and you use hydrochloric acid, you're defeating the purpose. Okay, so, in those people, before you reduce the acid blocker down, it might be useful to use an enzyme without acid, okay, to avoid that, constant body fighting over what it's supposed to do. So digestive enzymes are great. You can get them in multiple places, okay? They're all over vitamin websites. They're everywhere. I always say with all my supplements, look at the inactive ingredients. If it's full of a bunch of junk, right? If it's full of a bunch of colors and oils and fillers and whatnot, not the right supplement. It should be hardly anything. It should be a capsule and maybe one little, sometimes there's a natural filler depending, for stability and stuff like that. But it shouldn't be this long list of dyes and oils. If it has soybean oil in it, don't do it. Okay? But apple cider vinegar is another great way to get some acid in for those that have kind of that full stomach. In fact, I'll often drink apple cider vinegar as I'm making dinner, or when I'm on vacation and I eat something at a restaurant, and I'm not cooking it. I'll sometimes ask for a shot of apple cider vinegar just to kind of help it move through. Someone's asking if apple cider vinegar can also cause heartburn. Sure, if you're actually someone who has high stomach acid, say with a hiatal hernia or pregnant or whatnot, although I used it in pregnancy for heartburn and it worked great, but I suppose everyone's a little bit different, then it can obviously exacerbate the situation. This is why finding the cause is most important. That's the first thing to do. I could sit here all day and talk to you about natural remedies. If you don't know why you're taking them or what you're trying to accomplish by taking them, they're not going to do anything. You have to know why they work. Okay? And that's where a naturopathic doctor, a functional medicine doctor in your area can come in real handy, okay? Because we're working with the medications and lowering them down slowly, but then finding where the cause is so that you know what to support so you can reach optimum health is the key here, okay? So some other herbs I've talked about that actually lower inflammation in the gut. I did a live last Monday on these, some of the intestinal herbs, like aloe vera, slippery elm, marshmallow root. Those help soothe this mucosal tissue. So it can help heal ulcers even. I like to use glutamine, which is an amino acid that actually repairs the cells of the digestive tract. So let's think about this. If you've had chronic heartburn, regardless of whether you're using a PPI or not, that tissue has been damaged. So you have to repair it. Right? It's not enough to just add enzymes. You've got to now repair all that inflammation because inflammation causes further disease, okay, and further stress on the body. So you've got to repair all that. So that's a part of fixing the digestion in the stomach with proper acid, release of the gallbladder and pancreas. And then when you move into the small intestine, you've got to have that nice and low inflammation so you can absorb all those nutrients, right? If it's really inflamed and it's leaky and it's burned and it's not where it should be, you're not going to absorb the nutrients appropriately, and we're in the same boat, okay? So you have to treat from the top to the bottom every time. You can't just treat a part. It's kind of like if you're doing exercises and you want to get, your butt ready for a swimsuit, you can't just do butt exercises. You got to do the whole body. It doesn't work that way, right? Everything's connected, right? Same with the gut. All connected. You also should be replenishing probiotics. Now, probiotics are a huge topic. I did my own live on this. Go back and watch it. I have a couple articles on this as far as how to use them, what to pick, how to pick a good one, those types of things. I have people asking about meditation and breathing video. Yes, I've talked a lot about this. I have a ton of articles on my website about that. I may do a video in itself, but typically I don't want to put you all to sleep. I want to keep you all up, right? You like my energy, right? But one of the ways you also treat stress-induced GERD is by relaxation. So it's a nice segue. Meditation, breathing. I cannot stress enough how important it is to breathe. There is a reason why we breathe, okay? Think about breath. Where does that stem from? The diaphragm is where? It connects the respiratory system to the GI system. We are all related. You must breathe. If you're not breathing, the body thinks you're in stress. If you're in stress, what's going to happen to your digestion? The breath is key. If that's all you get out of meditation is just learning how to breathe, that is a key right there. Okay? You can also use things like digestive bitters. There's many herbs that do this. Dandelion, burdock, milk thistle, gentian, chamomile, motherwort. Bitters help stimulate the digestion. You can do this with food as well, okay? You can use things like arugula or bitter greens that are in your grocery store. This is why a lot of vegan cooking and even a lot of like Indian cooking does this a lot of the time. They have a bitter component and then they have a carminative calming component like fennel at the end. So you can combine food to cover the entire digestive process, okay? So key takeaway here, guys, low acid causes nutrient deficiency. Nutrient deficiency causes more stress. Okay, So these are very, very important to pay attention to. If you're using an acid blocker on a regular basis for GERD, please investigate why. Because the bottom line is 60 million of you in America are dealing with this at minimum. And all you're given is a script and told to sleep like this. I don't know about you, but I don't accept that answer as okay. There's more to it. If you are having to sleep like this and you are blocking acid, you have other symptoms that are going to develop. Our body is not dumb. It knows what to do. And if it does not have the tools that it needs to move forward, you are going to have poor health. And once again, some of those side effects that come out of not having proper digestion are osteoporosis, fractures, autoimmunity, GI disease, skin disorders, psoriasis, hives, acne, rosacea, eczema, pain conditions, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome. I haven't even talked about those yet. Those all have poor digestion is linked to that. Okay, so is stress, asthma, adrenal fatigue, hair loss, food allergies, and as I spoke about earlier, you've got higher risk of infection, community-acquired pneumonia. What are we all talking about right now that's killing people? Community-acquired pneumonia. Like, we have to support our health, guys. We have to support how our body works so that we can pull through, okay? So, hopefully this is helpful to you. I will post a link to the article, and all of those have links to other articles. So if you're like, hey, what did she mean by adrenal fatigue? Promise you it's in there. As someone mentioned earlier, I do have a book. Check it out. You can go to drpingel.com. There's a link to it, or you can look on Amazon. You can type in my name. I do these lives every weekday around this time, assuming my Facebook and Instagram camera work, which this morning was a little iffy. But I'm here taking suggestions still on things you want to hear about. I have a great week planned for you, and it's so nice to see some same faces here. So please like, share, forward this on. If you think this would help a friend, forward it on. If you like my crazy energy, forward it on. If you don't, don't. You can read. But anyway, it's really nice to have all of you here. I am Dr. Tricia Pingel. Thanks for joining your morning checkup here on Monday, May 11th, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Thank you so much. Have a great day.